The Ensemble podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. This content is created in partnership with our sponsor, Zurich Australia Limited, ABN 92 000 010 195 AFSL 232 510, and is limited to publicly available information. Before acting on any general advice, you should consider whether appropriate and obtain financial advice from a qualified financial advisor. Ensemble does not hold an AFS license and does not provide any financial advice or services or endorse any general advice. If a PDS or IM exists, you should obtain a copy and review it thoroughly before making a decision.
Hi, I'm Andrew Rocks from Ensemble, and I'm thrilled to be bringing to you the podcast Engine Room that's devoted entirely to the practices or the business of financial advice. Over the course of the next many months, we're going to be interviewing Australia's best independent and boutique advice firms, their practice managers, their GMs, on what environment is conducive to being a best practice, how they keep talent, how they attract talent, and what the future of financial advice is. It's the Engine Room podcast. Welcome aboard.
Zurich is proud to be supporting this episode. The Zurich and OnePath Advisor portal is more efficient than ever before, giving you access to 2 leading brands with 3 highly sought-after products, underpinned by 2 powerful underwriting engines, all with 1 simple sign-on, making it easier for you to do business and perform at your best.
Hi, my name's Andrew Rocks, and welcome to the Engine Room podcast. It's a podcast where we dig into the business of financial planning. We all know that financial planners love to see their clients, but it's the engine that they work inside that allows them to do their best work. And I'm really pumped today to be talking with someone who was described on his own website as an entrepreneur at heart. So let us make that decision. His name's James Millard, and he's from Insufficient Funds. And James, lovely to be catching up with you on the Engine Room podcast, mate.
G'day, Roxy. Thank you very much, mate. Great intro.
That's fine. And look, we spoke earlier. I'm really interested about your business, and look, one of the standout points is that in reality you've been going for a little bit of time, which you're going to give us an overview. I look at 5-6 years maybe, and you've got 26 team members in your team, and if you're out there listening, that's a really fast trajectory. So without any further ado, maybe give us an idea of how you've got to this point. And if you could make it funny and a little bit engaging, would help me, please. Mate,
I can't promise to have the comedic value that you will add to this, but I'll do my best. So, mate, yeah, look, I started a business with 2 others in 2015 when I rolled out of the corporate world. That was a bit of slow going, and the 3 of us made a very amicable split in 2018, where I then started with my wife, Tash, and one other team member at the time, Sufficient Funds. And so SF for short is Sufficient Funds is, I guess now for us, it's a mortgage broking and it's a financial planning business. I was always a financial planner at the core. But I guess the idea of that really our goal with starting that business was to be able to create something where we could add the value and help people go through the things that we were going through personally. And so being 40, there's a big backstory if you want to hear a bit about it. But the backstory is really, the end result is that was a focus on driven millennials and people who are in similar situations to us. So look, we just had our second child. We were navigating life as dual income, no kids. We'd lived in a couple of capital cities, things like fertility challenges. We went through IVF, raising our young family. Then it was about juggling parental leave, starting a business, starting a family, and everything that comes along with that. And so long story short, and there is a book coming in the next few months, so
I can't wait. Has it got a name yet, James?
It's Insufficient Funds and the Road to Sufficient.
Okay, so there's a play on many words there. So, but what just stood out then is that's a relatively kind of a noble pursuit, is to have the self-awareness to identify your own life's ups and downs and problems and struggles, and then to focus or dedicate your professional career to help others exactly like you. Is that sort of how you've got?
Really, for us, I was working with clients who had similar challenges, and I could see there was such a big opportunity there. And for us, the end result is, how do we make a connection between life and money? Because for the young millennials that we're working with, life's far more important. Money brings a whole lot of challenges. And it's really, how do we help that second part facilitate the bit that's more important? What are all these things? And there's a huge story there for everyone, right? And, I guess for our story, if you go to insufficient funds, this is way, way back, but I was at uni. We were, I was fortunate enough to be doing an exchange in Canada, and one of the boys pulled out an ATM slip, insufficient funds. The name, we couldn't start a band. We had no talent there, so we ended up we printed a bunch of trucker hats and T-shirts, and at the same time had bought an old Chrysler LeBaron. So we had one of those old wooden panelled station wagons, and we kind of lapped the states selling these out of the back of the car, so to speak. Look, our dream was to never work a full-time day in our lives, cash in, sell it to do what Billabong did and sell it off, or Hurley did to Nike and sell it off for 60 mil and move on. But, life got in the way. We were back at uni, we finished our degrees, we put our sensible shirts on and, got our full-time jobs with our ties and went from there. But I guess insufficient funds at the time, and I'd been blogging a lot about this in more recent years before starting the business, was, I guess it never lost traction. The core idea of there, you got this tiny little movement, but for us, it was a bit about having no money, but being able to do something with it. And then sufficient funds now is really looking back on that and going, well, we learned a hell of a lot during that time. And how can I maybe build something around that with the money nerd that I naturally have inside me somewhere?
There's nothing quite like it back in the day, when you'd be at the ATM and the insufficient funds would come out, and then you'd act like the money was coming out because you didn't want the people behind to realise that you just got the pink slip. And I think today with the tap and go, it's the anxiety that people have that the little red cross is going to come up. So I'm not sure, but that's one of the most sort of interesting ways of designing your company name, and I'm sure that resonates with a lot of your clients and your team members, James.
Big time, and I guess the team all says it in their own ways. We're all living our own version of sufficient funds, and we can talk about how our advice process and how that links in and the steps that we take there. But I think in terms of the backstory, we're not here without some incredible people, but I guess more than anything, it's the advice community, and we all know this, and this has been said 100 times, but you guys, what you're doing with XY and Ensemble and facilitating these conversations, the best thing about the advice community is everyone's willing to share. We're all competitors, apparently, but you don't really see that showing up in day-to-day, and if you had to ask someone a question, they'll give you the answer, and this is about ideally giving back. So there's some motivation there we've got some huge potential here as an industry, as a profession, and let's make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the notion of competitors really only exists when you've got a finite number of clients. But I've never met a financial planner in the last 5 years who's worried about obtaining clients. They're actually more worried about, can they deliver the things that they want and they desire, and can they do it at a price that's both affordable for the client and also palatable for your team and your staff, which is, the whole reason around talking about the practice management and how you actually build that deliverables. Now, I'm reading your website at the moment, and you've got a little comment, who the bloody hell are we? Which is a classic Australian tourism ad. Laptops and T-shirts. And you said you shook the shackles of the corporate world. So you very much have that feeling that you're working, that you're very aligned with the target market, and just repeating the target market, millennials. And when you say millennials and the age of 40, it really does date everyone on this call. I'm not sure where we are now. I'm a father of adult children, but it's the CEO of Ensemble, Clayton, is a millennial, and he's like, well, what happens when you become a middle-aged millennial? What's the tagline then?
I know, and I've probably got a couple of years on Clayton, I think, and especially with that beautiful baby face he still seems to be able to hang on to. But
we can edit this later. We'll cut that out.
Yeah, 100%.
So, just changing gears, when you were doing your journey from corporate into advice, and then you started, and then you've repivoted. Was there any sort of events or motivations that shaped your thoughts, other than the cool backstory of the name?
I think one thing is the ongoing challenge we seem to have as advisors, as a group, and the fact that everyone brings together. There's no doubt. I mean, everyone knows this, so we don't have to dwell on it. But the challenges that have been around, but what happens there is it actually forces you to be really good at what you do. And on top of that, I think for us, the fact that we were working with young people, the difference in my experience there, really getting stuck into this when we'd made some really strong partnerships with people who were able to give us quite a solid flow of incoming inquiries, is all of a sudden you realize that millennials, they challenge you on value, and you have to articulate it. And if you can't articulate value and get that across in that very first time you touch on what you're going to do with them, you've gone straight away. And so,
and I've got two questions to ask there. The first one is, you mentioned you've got a good flow of clients. I'd like to explore a little bit more about how you attract clients. But we'll come to that secondary. The second one is, how do you and your team of 26 articulate that value early on to quite sort of not skeptical, but just quite inquisitive and very, millennials have the benefit of being able to cross-reference everything. They're a generation that you're the third person they've looked at on the website, not the first. So how do you articulate that value early on with the client relationship?
So really just with anyone, it is absolutely about understanding what are their problems and what are their challenges. And the thing that comes up for almost everyone that we work with is there's a lot going on, and there always will be. And whether it's trying to buy the first home, through to starting the family, through to the challenges that might come with that, starting a business, fluctuating incomes, private school, and everything through that core kind of 10, 15 years that we're sort of going through and have been through, career challenges and everything else. There's so much there that everyone we talk to has something or everything, going on there. And I guess the idea there is, for us, if you can really get clear on what is important to you, what matters, then we can help you build a financial plan that actually links your money decisions to that. And once you understand that you're investing for the right reasons and it makes sense, and if the market tanks tomorrow, it has no bearing on the outcome of this, and this, and that they're the ones that actually matter, then the rest of it falls into place and you stay on track.
So how do you get these clients?
So we've got a couple of things. So we do have a really good, strong, we're probably on a 40% referral basis. So every clients have a great experience, and that's up there for us. Our two main sources of leads come from two big podcasts. So Glenn James, shout out to Glenn, and My Millennial Money. She's on the Money, Victoria Devine. These guys are doing an incredible job, I guess, waking people up to this ability to really take control of their finances. So the types of introductions that we get from people like this, they're engaged already, and they know what they don't know, and they're asking more
there's
questions.
Probably a good chance that they've listened to quite a few of the guys' podcasts, and they're starting to form and maybe do a little bit of that formation of ideas even before they get to you. And as you've just intimated, the best thing is they know what they don't know. And both of those people, Victoria, with She's on the Money, and Glenn and his team, have made a real fist of actually going out to the general public and promoting, basically get your act together. So you then have worked with them as an execution partner for people who make further inquiries. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's the benefit of us to someone like that is that we can, over a number of years, we can show that we're looking after their community. They can trust that process. They can trust that we've got capacity. So a decent team, it's not just one advisor trying to pull it all together. There's a really solid team, and I'm sure we'll get into the pod structure and how we operate all of that as well.
And look, just to change gears to get into the actual business of the business, you mentioned your clients are time poor. Well, I've been through that time zone. They're time destitute. Is that, you mentioned things like they might start their own business, they're buying their own home, they're putting their kids through private school. Was that the inspiration to get a real handle on the mortgages side of it and sort of control the outcome on that cost centre?
Yeah, I mean, look, going back going back some time, I worked in a business where we did everything and mortgages was part of it. So we started that naturally, and I was trying to be a mortgage broker and a financial planner at the same time, and that worked until we got to a certain level. I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore, but I brought in Randy, who I was lucky to have worked with prior. He runs the mortgage broking side of the business. They've got 3 brokers there now and a good pod structure around it. And that works incredibly well. But yeah, back to that, the outcome for the clients is, I mean, we're seeing it right now, right? The refinance market is insane, but it's also we're talking to so many people who haven't quite bought their first home and just having a sounding board and saying, well, what does that look like, and what do I need, and how do I approach that? The two sides of the business, planning and broking, just work so well together.
Oh, look, you're preaching to the converted with me. It's been the genesis of my one. I always thought that if you can save them, if you can get the best quality life insurance at the best quality price, if you can get the efficient frontier of what they pay in mortgages, and you can assist them with either an in-house or a quality accounting referral, and the client ends up with $5,000 to $10,000 extra per year, it becomes an easy sell to say, well, I would like to charge a fee for my services to then make you money as well.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think that the common misconception with millennials is they're not willing to spend money, and that's rubbish. They will absolutely throw money at something if they can see the value in it, and that's the key. You got to create that, but we get paid for what we do. That's very important.
So you mentioned you've got a couple of mortgage brokers, but maybe give me an idea of how you arrange your business to complement the articulation of how you want to service your clients.
Yeah, so we've got that. We keep they're two separate entities, broking and planning. From a planning perspective, we have the advisor that's obviously the key relationship holder and the provider of advice, but that's really all they do. And this had stemmed from me trying to not do anything that I absolutely shouldn't be doing because I get my dirty mitts on things and I break it. I need to step back and focus on that, whatever that might be. And it's no longer, one-on-one with clients as much as it was. And now we have the good advisor and a pod structure around that advisor. So our key for advisors is they are relationship people. They have the ability to have conversations and they can engage and they can coach and they're active listeners. We then have what we call an advice 2IC, which is more like an assistant advisor or associate advisor. They may be doing the PY and working towards it. They may not be, may already be qualified as an advisor who and just wants to work more in a support role, but also maybe service some of the ongoing clients. We then have 2 admin in that one pod. One's for onboarding, everything up to getting through the presentation of a plan. And then the other one is for implementation. And so that's applications and seeing it through to completion there. And then we have a paraplanner. We have a paraplanning team that we share between the pods. And we're working on how that kind of fits into that exact structure. But they're all internal. We used to outsource a lot of that stuff, but now internally. When I say internal, half the team's in the Philippines.
Yep.
We see them as an extension of us. So it's all internal in my mind.
Well, a quick glance at your website, there's no difference between, and we'll get to where all of your team are, but even your advisors and your 2ICs, and I do believe that Advice 2IC might be a completely unique name to your own business. I personally love it. So if I'm an advisor and I've got an Advice 2IC, does that mean that the advisors does a lot of the onboarding of the new clients and potentially the 2IC is assisting in reviewing the portfolios?
That's right. And also helping build the strategy and everything up to delivery of that advice. And so being that connection with a bit of experience who understands strategy and everything else that's really important there, to then be the connection between the admin side of the client services part and the advisor themselves, so that they can come out of a meeting. We're not sitting in each other's meetings, but we will record or do a quick Loom wrap up to then summarize and move on. And that's imperative. Just that cost efficiency and keeping the advisor in front of clients ideally is the only way to do it for us.
Cool. And for the uninitiated, Loom's a piece of software that helps you record your meetings there. So with the types of clients you articulated up front and having a lending business, is it safe to say that you do have quite a large demand for life insurance? Is that a key part, estate planning life insurance of your business?
Yeah, definitely is. Definitely is. And, it's an interesting thing for us because we were about a year and a half ago, and this was leading up to the changes with income protection. We were doing risk-only plans, and we switched that to now focusing. And this was a tough decision to make, but it's something we really challenged in terms of profitability. Spitting out a risk-only plan for us where we had the team working on so much other, really important stuff around the goal planning and the bigger plans that we write, we made the call to drop that as a service offering and just offer a holistic service that includes risk. So we knew what we're doing. We'd done a heap of it. I think we submitted something like 300 insurance applications in the last couple of weeks of, would have been October 21.
Wow.
With the income protection changes. And we had that, but we just had to look. I was just looking at the cost of delivering it, and in the end, the team was very thankful for the pressure that came off after the end of October by saying we'd focus a little bit more on our holistic service, which in the end, that's our core value. That's what we're absolutely best at, and that's the reason we made that decision.
Oh, and look, if you're passionately aligned with that as a service and you deliver it, then that's all you need to do. And how much face time do your advisors get? It seems like they've got quite a bit of support. What with a 2IC, with an implementation, with someone who's organising research and whatnot, and also a sort of a consolidated paraplanning team. If I'm working for you and I'm an advisor, what sort of face time do I get with clients as a percentage? So
you'd be doing anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week, and so that's that's a spread between, there's the phone calls, there's the initial call, there's our defining sufficient session, which is an hour and a half. There's another meeting before presenting the plan, which is an hour, and then the plan presentation can be up to 2 hours. And it's, multiple of those each week.
Now, you mentioned that you've got some team members in the Philippines. What was your philosophy around you're growing your global team? And also maybe give us a feel for where is your team located at the moment? Given that you're a Newcastle native, lots of pictures of you at the beach on your website having a bit of fun, but that's not necessarily your business per se.
No, so look, I grew up in Grafton. I came to uni in Newcastle. It's where I met my wife, Tash. We ended up in Brisbane for a couple of years. We're in Sydney for 12, nearly over a decade in the end, and back to Newey more recently the last couple of years. So as part of our transition from our original business, as part of our transition from the original business into building sufficient funds, there was a heavy element of our clients are not coming into the city. They're not coming there. They don't want to come see us there. And so we were doing video meetings anyway, and we were just wasting so much time commuting that we ended up completely remote. And that was a short-term solution.
What year was that, James, relative to COVID?
Well before we were. That was 2016,
right?
So a little bit before COVID brought the necessity, and thankfully for us, we're already very well equipped, luckily, for all of that. But it was a move that we'd made when we were small and very easily managed at that point. But we turned that into an intention, and it moved then from now where we are now. We have no location. We don't have a head office. We don't have an office anywhere. And we've got team in Australia from Cairns down to Tassie. And as I said before, we're talking about the Philippines. We've got half our teams in the Philippines as well. So in terms of structure, anyone can work from anywhere. We don't mind that. We've got to, do a lot around engagement and make sure that we're still catching up and doing all that type of thing. But yeah, really, really works well.
Well, I'm probably going to touch on that a bit later on around how you manage your people and your culture, given what you've just articulated there. But in relation to the technology stack that you utilise, what do you use? What do you like? What can be improved?
So we've got Active Campaign that we use more to engage, and we use that to follow the flow of clients through that, especially the kind of the first 100 days, that first creating the plan, and from there we use Basecamp, which is project management software. It's Basecamp 4 now, which we used to use Asana, which is similar, and Slack. Basecamp, we found, combined the two of them and would allow communication on clients, and the client becomes an individual project. and then it builds from there. And so you can create task lists off the back of that flow for every individual client. You can cut in and add what's required and take out what's not, and really allocate everything. So that's our workflow system essentially. Then we've got the base of everything is Gmail, Google. So we use Google Drive, Gmail, found the search function, the integrations. Whilst I think Microsoft is definitely catching up, we just found that was and has been incredibly strong there. Xplan is our core for spitting out plans. We use it for what we absolutely have to. We have found, and this is probably licensee driven probably for the most part in what we're using there, but Xplan from the ones we've looked at in terms of the modeling that we do, and this is where the paraplanner role is so key to us, is that modeling and the short-term modeling, especially the first 5 years. I don't believe in long-term plans in 30-year modeling for someone who's 30 years old, because everything changes tomorrow. But that first few years is imperative, and having good software there to get that right is where we actually bring a lot of our value for these people. So on top of that, we're using our payment gateways, Stripe, and that links in through Calendly. So booking through Calendly, everything flows straight into the calendar from there, through Gmail. Everything's stored in Google Drive, and Stripe automates payments.
Perfect, thanks. And look, it sounds like building those workflows in Basecamp 4. I'm familiar with Asana. I haven't worked with Basecamp, but you've piqued my interest there. It enables your remote team to actually make sure the ball isn't dropped with the client, because it's once they log in there, they can see, we're on. This project hasn't been finished. There's nowhere to hide, is there?
That's right. Yeah, it's very good. It shows everyone's activity. It shows what they're working on. It's one of those helpful items where you're talking about a remote team. They could be literally anywhere. So we can see what they've done today. We can see what they did yesterday. We can see what's still outstanding. So that's really important.
And do you, in relation to your mortgage broking, do you run the full financial planning process and then refer them into the mortgage broking business, or is there a level of integration there?
There's a level of integration. It'll really depend on the client. I mean, there's sometimes we're having that initial conversation. There's like straight away, we need to save some money and we've got a mortgage, and you just ask the right questions there and send it straight over. If it generally, I would say it's better to run through the process and make the referral after, or the introduction afterwards. But it can go both ways, of course. And, one of our challenges that we're still working on, but I think we've got a lot better at it since that change from risk only offering to dropping that was now it's a more difficult conversation for a mortgage broker to introduce an entire financial plan than it is to just say, hey, you got a debt, you need to cover that.
Right.
So that's a work in progress for us, but we are seeing we're educating the brokers really around the value of what we do, and that's the starting point. If you can have a conversation around that, for the most part, that's the key.
And look, when you're actually now doing people's overall goals, do you do much investments? And if you do you have do you run your investments in portfolios? Or just give us a bit of a feel. And is there any platforms that work for you that you like dealing with? Go for it.
Yeah. So our licensing has always been fairly open, fairly platform agnostic in terms of that. So we chose NetWealth a long, long time ago and just haven't found any need to leave. The support we get through the BDMs like Rachel Colligan are insane. It's really, really helpful. And that goes for any BDM that jumps in. There's so much value that they can add when they do a good job and when they're receptive. So yeah, massive shout out to people like Rachel, people like Bez from Neos. They do an incredible job. We're very open to using all sorts of different insurers and investment products, that we absolutely do. But sometimes the cream of the crop rise to the top with the service delivery, especially, and they're very helpful. And that's I guess a key for us to be able to continue doing what we're doing. In terms of investment approach, we like to keep it simple, but we can dial it up when needed. And so, my personal view on this is your behaviour is going to, especially for the people we're working with, right? They don't have $5 million, and it's not managing that to beat the market. It's about someone putting more away on a more regular basis and understanding the impact of that. And so the outcome is often it's an index type scenario, or it might be a core and satellite. The fact that we're not we're not, we're not placing huge value from a client perspective on that, because we're not telling them, look, as stockbrokers, we're not trying to beat the market. It's just literally about placing it in something that's appropriate and reviewing it annually. We still have that as a fairly manual approach in terms of we have a good set of the kind of satellite funds that we like to use, and then focus more on the core side of things for the most part.
Oh, and look, your people are going to contribute to wealth. Their contributions are what it is, and you really need to have that discipline, or get them to have that discipline, and they do that by trusting your process, and also by really buying in to the process and the vision and the goals, etc. Because people need a reason why. They also need it to be easy. You mentioned that you've got time poor people. The tech stack that you've intimated from Stripe to Calendar, you're reducing friction at every possible point, and you've removed commuting. You've removed friction for as many places as you can. And I'm sure in 5 years when we do this again, James, you'll even have further articulations, and almost all of them will be to make the life of the client easier for them to achieve their goals, rather than, as you said, beating indexes or whatnot. So when I'm talking about your actual team, and I did start this podcast by saying that building to a team of 26 people in a handful of years is quite an achievement. You outlined how you structured it, but what I'm interested in is why people join you, why they stay. And then, once you've done that, because you are so new relative to a 30-year business, why you think they're going to grow with you. So let's start with maybe why they join you. What sort of person comes to you and says, I want to be part of your previously known as insufficient, now known as sufficient funds philosophy, James?
So, I think having that philosophy helps. And certainly there's a strong drive. The way I frame this, and there's actually a job ad on the Ensemble or the XY talent board right now, is Talent Hub, I should say, is that we kind of feel like it's difficult to provide value for millennials, but everyone wants to do it. And I feel like we've nailed that. And so when it comes to that, that's a big thing for our existing team. And they see that they're working on files of people that are similar to them, or, have similar challenges. And that's really helpful because they can really engage in that. And so I feel that's probably it. I think the motivation, the enthusiasm that we all have for what we're actually delivering here, it goes far beyond spitting out a plan that helps add financial value. And I guess for us, that's the kind of person we're also looking to hire. And we do a few things that we're fairly careful about how we do that. And that evolves each time we do it. But at the moment, I think we've got a pretty good process around that as well.
And maybe before we get into the process, I'll just give you an anecdote. So I ran a financial planning practice, and we didn't call it millennials because they didn't exist at the time. But our clients were typically 30 to 50 because we were all in our 30s. And we were attempting to tread the same path that you're doing with your clients. And for the first 10 years, you're doing that. And your clients, are, relative to other clients, may not have the investable funds and whatnot. But I can tell you that as those people reach 40, 45 and head to 50, you end up with all the wealthy clients. So if I'm an advisor with you and I'm playing the long game, then you probably got more of a future ahead of you than a practice that potentially is not looking to reinvigorate itself from just being either a retirement only or whatnot, of which there are plenty of those, and I do speak with them, but you're starting here and riding that wave. Now, when you say you've got a couple of processes for recruiting or obtaining people, what's unique to you guys? I don't need to know your whole process, but what do you think you do that's a little bit different?
So something that we've tried a few times, and it's worked really well to really cut the number of applications that we have to deal with, which has been a challenge, especially if you go to somewhere like Seek or something. But you end up with a heap of things you have to work through, but you never know who you're dealing with, right? So we're working really hard on we need high performers, but we also need the right fit for us, and that cultural fit and the personality that comes with that, especially for things like the advisor role, are really important. So we have one hurdle that we found, and I'm not sure, I really wish people would engage more with it, but asking them to do a 2-minute video and send it to us has been something that works incredibly well. Just really 2 simple questions. What do you tell us a bit about yourself, and why should we choose you?
And I bet I bet when you get the one that just stands out, well, first of all, anyone who doesn't send that to you clearly is not going to perform very well in an environment where all your clients see you on video. Yeah. So that's quite a binary sort of filter. But when you get that video and they just nail it, does your heart sing?
It does, and that's actually a problem that I have, because the second part, testing whether they're actually going to be a high performer, I get so bloody excited about the fact that we might have found the right person, and you can see it in their eyes when they talk to you. You still need to know that they have numerical ability and reasoning and everything else that comes with it.
And do you do that with like a psych test or a series of questions? What's the sort of the granularity there?
So we use, we do use the psych test. We've actually got a couple that we employ at different stages, I guess. And that is, one of them is Peep Logica. And big shout out to Corey at Verse for getting me onto that one. Peep Logica is incredible it's a big test. And what you do is you use it internally to map your ideal staff member, essentially. And so from an advisor perspective, I did it. One of our other advisors have done it, and we've then collaborated on that to say, okay, well, with what we have, what's perfect there? And then map the new person against that. And that gives us, it's a bit of personality, but it's also numerical and verbal reasoning and ability. So it gives you the kind of full picture there. So that's really helpful up front. Another one that we're introduced to more recently through our business coaches is Wealth Dynamics. And the Wealth Dynamics is an incredible test where it's a really short one, set up by a guy called Roger Hamilton, and you can look it up. There's heaps you would absolutely know about this, no doubt, Roxy, but I guess you get 8 profiles, and for us, really, there's only one profile in there that we feel works for an advisor that we need. And so there's the star profile that comes out of that. And what a star looks like, it sounds egotistical, but it's very much the opposite. It's someone who doesn't mind the light shining on them, but they're also very happy to push that light onto someone else. And that's where, as an advisor, if you've got that quality, you're already going into bat for your clients in every way. And that's what we need. We don't mind, we use the Clifton Strengths Finder as well, but that's not that's not a hiring process. That's more of a, longer term team engagement. Where does everyone fit, and making decisions around that.
Look, and I probably bored people with this comment of you've got to hire slow and fire fast. Today's not talking about how to fire, but we're talking about hire. What I might do is, I've also spoken to Corey, and he's mentioned it's Peak Logica, isn't it? I might just make sure we've got that link for that one. Also, Wealth Dynamics, and maybe just loop back on your business coach. I'm a big fan of being coached. And in fact, my business partner, as we speak today, was my business coach. How did you get involved with your coach, and what's the main thing takeouts that you have?
So in terms of business coach, we are a part of the Abundance Global community. And so we joined that about 12 months ago, actually off a reference from our good friend Ben Nash. And we saw them as a great team, run by a really good guy, David Dugan, who's done a lot of work on himself, but then turned this into an incredible business that they then use to grow businesses. And they deal with everyone. They work with everyone. So you get a bit of everything in terms of that. And so we went through what they call their accelerator program sort of mid last year. It was 14 weeks of intensive work on this, work on that. And we just go through and you tick it all off and you graduate, and then you go into what they call mastery. And so these guys have been great we got to the point where with, I think it was 20 people in the team at the time, we looked at ourselves and we're like, we don't know what we don't know here. And the blind spots, if they are there, could be fatal if we miss something really important. So we need to really engage a coach, and we had never done it before. And that was a big leap of faith, but it's so far so good.
There's probably a few organisational structures here, changes at play. This is an engine room podcast, and you mightn't have realised it, but you did disclose that you're seeing less and less of the client. So in many respects, you're also stepping into building the business of the business. And where you have potentially had your blind spots, you probably didn't know that, you've now engaged a coach who is more than likely making sure that you're articulating your strengths and making sure that everyone's working at their best and highest use, which probably help you lead to ditching the risk only and doing the holistic plans and the whole thing. I can see you nodding, but remember, this is a podcast. You can say yes, Andrew, if you want.
I don't want to interrupt because I actually really enjoy listening to you, mate. So, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and there's the element of, you don't know what you don't know, and if you've got someone to plug those gaps, but it was also holding us accountable. For me, when you get busy, everything else falls away if you're not focused on the right things, and it just means if you know you're doing the right thing at the right time, you're so much more confident about just smashing it out, getting it done, and moving on. And that was the biggest thing for me.
And you've talked about how your team members are arranged, the tools they've got, the type of clients, the fact that there's just a river of opportunities for new clients coming in, but how do you arrange, what are your meeting rhythms with your team? How do you know if they're doing a good job? How do you maybe answer those? And then I might ask you, how do you celebrate? How do you manage to celebrate those things when we probably grew up in an environment where everyone was in the one office? So let's start with the first question, which is, what are your meeting rhythms? How do you build that consistency, and how do you measure success with your team members?
So thank you. This is really timely because we're actually kind of reviewing this at the moment, or revisiting and looking to put in things like a weekly advisor meeting. So currently the pods meet, but not the advisors, and it's more of a bounce ideas and reflect on that.
Just the pod, so the two ICs meeting at the moment, they're almost running the private office of their advisor. Is that right?
With the advisor involvement, but
okay,
yeah, that's
cool.
Absolutely. And, but then you've got the pods meet, but there's that advisor, there's the value in just bringing the advisors together in, what did you do? What did you deal with? What went wrong? And that's the stuff that you hear in an office, right? You hear that stuff, and it's the coaching and the training that can come off the back of that. That's incredibly helpful. We're looking at the all-in team meetings and bringing in a monthly all-in team meeting. And at the moment, what do? We've got one-on-ones with the key, so most of the guys and girls that report to me. And so we've got our monthly one-on-ones, so to speak, where we catch up about life and business and work and everything else. But in terms of the fact that we've grown so quickly, we just had to take stock and say, let's get some structure here. So we've got a bit of a plan in place there, but it'll revolve around some advisor meetings weekly, and then a monthly all-in. And then we use, actually, and this probably helps, that second part of that question was, how do we keep the camaraderie going and all the chat around the office? We use Voxer. And so Voxer being a phone app, it's also desktop. That works for just the chit chat, all the random stuff. It's not client talk. It's not anything specific. We've got different channels and so forth, similar to Slack, but we use that in a way that is a lot of fun stuff. We're sharing feedback. If someone gets a Google review, it goes in there, just the stuff that really keep everyone pumped up.
And in relation to using Voxer, how did you get your global team members to sort of participate in that banter, and was there any tips or tricks you've got for other people to get your global team involved in that chit chat, so to speak? So
part of that comes from really pushing that, because we saw that as a need, especially, and it is a challenge sometimes to have, someone in the Philippines feeling like they can give that feedback or say that joke or whatever it might be. And so we just really actively encourage it, and asking questions, I think is a really important part. Taking an interest, just as I promote strongly with the advisors for your clients, take an interest in the team, take an interest in what's going on for them. We've got all sorts of hilarious stories that get shared in there, and different gifs and gifs that float around. Some of the team in the Philippines are hands down the best at sharing the funniest things at the right time. So yeah, they've built confidence over the years.
No, that makes all the difference. There are going to be people listening to this Engine Room podcast where they're looking at doing this exercise for the first time, and you've just given some pretty sage advice based on my experience there as well. So, and as far as how do you celebrate, do you guys ever get together physically, or maybe give us the feel for that?
Yeah. So I sort of said we have an annual retreat. Or that has been the case for the last 2 years. So it's certainly something we want to try and make sure, subject to performance, that we're able to do that. And we were lucky enough to be able to bring one of our team members out last year from the Philippines, and we have that focus of getting everyone together. It gets a lot of work done sometimes, but it's also a good time to celebrate and do it properly. Because that's very important as well. We also have monthly drinks, so we have the obligatory monthly drinks on Zoom, and of course that's a good one. But yeah, getting everyone together, and also, but now that we do have people around the country, and the team in the Philippines often get together face to face as well. More of an ad hoc thing, but just having, if you live anywhere near each other, we're now more intentional about, okay, let's make this and this person get together, and we'll go and catch up.
Now, with your future of your business, where do you see? So I'll frame this question in two parts, because you're clearly going through a journey from someone who was a business writer. You're now coached. You're building out operational things. You're potentially putting the jigsaw puzzle in place with people, with deliverables. You've done quite a lot of good things, but where does your business go from here in the next 5 years? And then the other part of it is, where do you see, hence, the future of the practices in financial advice?
Okay. So, I mean, look, we just stopped it to kind of, through the business coaches, we started to try and create this idea of a 10-year vision for us. And that is a long way away. It's very difficult to do. That was quite a challenging exercise. But, what came out of that is set the goals so damn high that then you can put the fence posts in place and join the dots and do it in a methodical way. And so I'd encourage anyone to really get stuck into that idea of just getting crazy with your vision and think about how big could it possibly be.
The old big, hairy, audacious goal is one of the lingos, isn't it?
That's right. And so that idea, call it a grand vision or whatever you want, is it's really, for us, it's completely dominating financial planning and mortgage broking for millennials, for driven millennials. And those are the ones for us. It's people who they're actually out there to define, achieve, and reach beyond sufficient funds is how we frame that. And, we see the more value we can add and the more bells and whistles around that service is the ticket to that. And at the same time, scaling to the point that, I guess, just take a step back from that. We set annual 2 and 3 year goals that we're sharing with the team now as well, in terms of revenue and client numbers and so forth. And so those are the kind of short term, build momentum. And then if we're gonna hit the bigger stuff in 10 years time, we've got to hit 1 and 2 and 3 in the first place and move from there. So when it comes to the industry itself and where I think practices need to go, it's very much about embracing tech. It's very much about realizing that, that traditional SOA, which may no longer be necessary, is going to be something with that merger for the SOA and the use of tech to really bring that alive for clients. AI, we're seeing now, is already completely changing the way people can create content and have conversations and all of that. And obviously we know that's going to completely blow the world up in a positive way, ideally, in the next few years. And I think it's very important that we all as practice owners, but anyone in the business, is involved in just understanding that type of thing. At its core, really making sure you provide a relevant offering to the people you work with best.
So it's fair to say you've targeted your clients, but you're also targeting your team members. So what's the type of team member that you would like to have service your millennial client base? Because in case you do rewind this podcast, you did use the word dominate, which is a pretty definitive and aggressive word, which I loved. But so what's your ideal team member look like? Not just because your current one's going to be listening, but we spoke earlier, you're in the market to grow people at any part of your team, any facet of your team. So what do they look like?
So, I mean, the job ad right now on your platform is out there for advisors, and we're keen to hire one or two as soon as possible. But like you said, hire slow, put everyone through the right hoops. But in terms of what we're looking for, it really is emotionally intelligent humans. It's people who can connect, and that goes for anyone in the business. We want, because you have to be able to work remotely, you've got to be able to have those conversations and be able to understand how people might take what you say the wrong way if you say it in a certain way. And it's that idea of emotional intelligence as well as the intelligence that comes, ideally with someone working in the financial planning world. We need smart people. And that's where those profiling tools really helpful in terms of what we're looking for there. It's enthusiastic, motivating people. We're all pretty young, and I mean my clients and a lot of the team would call me old, but we're not against hiring someone who's more senior than I might be, for the fact that they'll bring something slightly different to what we're offering at the moment. The core and the key there is they have to understand and want to relate and work with the people that we're working with. And so, yeah.
So I think when I asked you to sort of the practice the future, I think you've reiterated what quite a few of my guests have said, which is being very clear at the target market you're after, and making sure that the operational business that you've built complements that target market. I think the concept of a jack of all trades or a general store in financial planning is very hard to price. It's very hard to attract and retain the talent. And it's just confusing in the marketplace, and that's one of the takeouts there as well. And I would safe to say that people don't start with that emotional intelligence. And one of the upsides of being involved in Ensemble is that we see people grow in their peer to peer. So not just do you have the ability to craft your advisors talking to other advisors and paraplanners, but they've got that ability to talk to other people. And as you intimated up front, there's no competition there. It's been one of our more satisfying things is seeing, people's ability to relate and have that emotional intelligence increase, not as a function of education in the traditional way, but as a function of relating and communicating with their peers.
Absolutely right. And I think that it comes down, that's the core of what we would look for, and I think most people would be looking for in the sense of any partner or any staff member. It is about understanding that there's a connection there, and you can make that connection, and you can understand when they're not feeling up for that conversation that you think you need to have. And so, yeah, we're very open and always keen to, work with and partner with like-minded businesses. We're keen for advisors. But to be honest, as a growing business, there's opportunities coming up quite regularly as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much for your time today, James, and thank you very much for opening the lid on that niche. Well, when I say niche, there's a lot of people are in that age group, right?
Yeah.
And how you're intending on servicing them, your philosophy around that one team, right down to a bit of honesty around how you've now increased the accountability by bringing on a business coach, by going through that program. People don't start being awesome as a practice or a CEO, and it's a journey. And people in your team don't have to start day one being awesome, provided they've got that intent and that requirement and that empathy. They can grow with you as they can with many other quality practices. And with that in mind, this is all about lifting lids on practice management in Australia, lifting lid on the wonderful, I suppose, and colourful different ways in which our community is servicing different people in Australia, and kind of getting away from the binary kind of you're in or out, or we do this or you don't. We are very good in financial planning at actually caring for our clients, and by building a great quality engine room, it gives our advice community the opportunity and the air to do their best. With that in mind, James, look, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you and Sufficient Funds all the best, and I hope that I only have a handful of insufficient fund things come out of my ATM for the limited amount of time that they'll exist in the future.
Absolutely, Roxy, mate. Thank you so much to you and the whole ensemble crew. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the call up, and yeah, I hope that's been helpful. And yeah, you guys are doing some amazing work.
And if you want any details in relation to the Sufficient Funds business, there'll be links here. And as James has already pointed out, he's got an active ad out there for people as well. Look, have a great evening, James. Take care.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.